Gatsby, cast of One More Day Today.
And we're back in 5, 4, 3. We return you now to Act 2 of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby.
The day agreed of Gatsby and Daisy's reunion was pouring rain. At 11 o'clock, a man in a raincoat dragging a lawnmower tapped at my front door and said that Mr. Gatsby had sent him over to cut my grass.
Mr. Gatsby sent me in to cut your grass.
At 2 o'clock, a greenhouse arrived from Gatsby's, and an hour later, Gatsby hurried in.
The journal said the rain would stop about 4. Have you got everything you need for tea?
Together, we scrutinized the 12 lemon cakes. Will they do?
Of course, of course. They're fine, old sport.
The rain cooled about 3:30 to a damp mist. Gatsby peered toward the windows from time to time.
I'm going home. She's not coming. I can't wait here all day.
Don't be silly, it's just 2 minutes to 4. He sat down and simultaneously there was the sound of a motor turning into my lane. We both jumped up and I went out into the yard.
Is this where you live, my dearest one? Are you in love with me, or why did I have to come alone?
Well, that's the secret. Tell your chauffeur to go away and spend an hour.
Come back in an hour, Ferdy.
Yes, Miss Daisy?
We went in, and to my surprise, the living room was deserted. Well, that's funny.
What's funny?
Excuse me. I went to open the door. Gatsby was standing in a puddle of water, glaring tragically into my eyes. He stalked by me into the hall and disappeared into the living room. For half a minute, there wasn't a sound aside from the rain. And then from the living room, I heard a sort of choking murmur. I joined them.
I certainly am glad to see you again. It's been a long time.
5 years, next November.
Excuse me.
Where are you going?
I'll be back.
I've got to speak to you about something before you go.
He followed me into the kitchen.
Oh, God. This is a terrible mistake.
You're just embarrassed, that's all. Daisy's embarrassed too.
She's embarrassed?
Just as much as you are.
Don't talk so loud.
You're acting like a little boy. Look, not only that, you're rude. Daisy's sitting in there all alone. He went back into the other room. I walked out the back way and ran for a huge tree whose leaves made a fabric against the rain. About half an hour later, the sun came out, so I went inside. They were sitting on the couch, looking at each other, and every vestige of embarrassment was gone. Daisy's face was smeared with tears.
Hello, old sport.
But it stopped raining.
What do you think of that? It stopped raining.
I'm glad, Jay.
I want you and Daisy to come over to my house. I'd like to show her around.
You sure you want me to come?
Oh, absolutely, old sport.
Daisy went upstairs to wash her face while Gatsby and I waited on the lawn.
My house looks swell, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's splendid.
Took me just 3 years to earn the money that bought it.
I thought you inherited your money.
I did, old sport, but I lost most of it in the panic of the war.
Well, what business are you in?
I've been in several things. I was in the drugstore business and then the oil business, but I'm not in either one right now.
Daisy came out of the house.
That huge place there?
Do you like it?
I love it. But I don't see how you live there all alone.
I keep it full of interesting people, night and day.
We entered by the huge door and wandered through music rooms and salons. We went upstairs through dozens of bedrooms, intruding into one where a disheveled man in pajamas was doing exercises. Finally, we came to Gatsby's own bedroom, which was the simplest room of all, except where the dresser was garnished with a toilet set of pure gold. Daisy took the brush with delight and smoothed her hair. Gatsby sat down and began to laugh. He was consumed with wonder by her presence. Recovering himself, he opened 2 enormous cabinets which held his suits, ties, and shirts, piled in stacks a dozen high.
I've got a man in England who buys me clothes. He sends over a selection of things at the beginning of each season.
He took out a pile of shirts and began throwing them on the bed. Shirts of sheer linen and thick silk and fine flannel.
Here are shirts with stripes and scrolls and plaids and coral and apple green and lavender and orange and Indian blue.
I've never seen such beautiful shirts before.
After the house, we saw the grounds and the swimming pool. But it began to rain again, so we stood looking at Long Island Sound.
If it wasn't for the mist, we could see your home across the bay. We have a green light that burns all night at the end of your dock.
Daisy put her arms through his, but he seemed absorbed in what he had just said. Possibly it had occurred to him that the colossal significance of that light had now vanished forever. Now it was again a green light at the end of the dock. I began to walk about the room and then looked at a photograph of a man in yachting costume. Who's this?
Oh, that's Mr. Dan Cody, old sport. He's dead now. He used to be my best friend years ago.
There was a small picture of Gatsby, also in yachting costume, taken when he was about 18.
I adore it. The pompadour. You never told me you had a pompadour or a yacht.
Now look at this. Here's a lot of clippings about you. Yes? Well, I can't talk now. I said a small town. He's no use to us if Detroit is his idea of a small town. I know what we'll do. We'll have Clip Springer play the piano.
He went out of the room and returned in a few minutes, accompanied by Klipspringer.
Did we interrupt your exercises?
I fell asleep.
Clip Springer plays the piano, don't you, old sport?
Oh, I don't play well, but I'm out of practice, you see?
Don't talk so much. Play!
Klipspringer went to the piano in the salon and began to play and sing along.
Every morning, every evening, ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh but honey, ain't we got fun?
All the lights were going on in West Egg now. As I said goodbye, I saw the expression of bewilderment had come back into Gatsby's face. Almost 5 years. There must have been moments that afternoon when Daisy tumbled short of his dreams. No amount of fire or freshness can challenge what a man will store up in his heart. His hand took hold of hers, and they looked back at me. I left them there together.
There's nothing surer. The rich get richer and the poor get children. In the meantime, in between time, ain't we got fun?
Gatsby's notoriety had increased all summer. When he saw Dan Cody's yacht drop anchor on Lake Superior, it was Jay Gatsby who borrowed a rowboat and informed Cody that a wind might catch him up and break him. Dan Cody was 50 years old, many times a millionaire. To the young Gatsby, the yacht represented all the beauty in the world. Cody found that he was quick and ambitious, and when the boat left for the West Indies, Gatsby was on it. He was employed in a vague personal capacity: steward, mate, skipper, secretary. The arrangement lasted 5 years and might have lasted indefinitely, except Dan Cody died. Gatsby told me all of this much later, at a time when I had reached the point of believing everything and nothing about him. One Saturday night, Tom and Daisy and I went to Gatsby's party. There were the same people, the same profusion of champagne, but now I was looking at it through Daisy's eyes.
These things excite me so.
Look around. You must see the faces of many people you've only heard about.
We don't go around very much. In fact, I don't know a soul here.
Perhaps you know that lady right there. She's in the movies.
She's lovely.
Daisy and Gatsby danced. Then they sauntered over to my house and sat on the steps for half an hour, while at her request, I remained watchfully in the garden. After supper, during which Tom ate at another table with a common but pretty girl, as Daisy characterized her, I sat on the front steps with Daisy and Tom while they waited for their car.
Who is this Gatsby anyhow? Some bootlegger? A lot of these newly rich people are just big bootleggers, you know.
Not Gatsby.
Well, he certainly must have strained himself to get this menagerie together.
At least they're more interesting than the people we know.
I'd like to know who he is and what he does. And I think I'll make a point of finding out.
I can tell you right now, he owned a lot of drugstores. He built them up himself. Good night, Nick.
I stayed late that night. Gatsby asked me to wait until he was free.
She didn't have a good time. I feel far away from her. It's hard to make her understand.
He wanted nothing less of Daisy than for her to tell Tom, I never loved you, obliterating the past 3 years. Then she and Gatsby would go back to Louisville and be married, just as if it were 5 years ago.
She used to understand. We'd sit for hours.
You can't repeat the past.
Can't repeat the past. Why, of course you can, old sport.
It was when curiosity about Gatsby was at its highest that the lights in his house failed to go on Saturday night. Next day, Gatsby called me on the phone. Have you been sick? Or are you going away?
No, old sport.
I hear you fired all your servants.
Well, Daisy comes over quite often in the afternoons, and I didn't want the gossip.
I see. He was calling me at Daisy's request. Would I come to lunch at her house tomorrow? Jordan would be there. Something was up. The next day was broiling, the warmest of the summer. Daisy and Jordan lay upon the enormous couch. Gatsby stood in the center of the crimson carpet. Daisy watched him and laughed her sweet, exciting laugh.
That's Tom's girl on the telephone.
Very well then, I won't sell you the car. I'm under no obligations to you. And as for bothering me about it on lunchtime, I won't stand that at all.
Holding down the receiver.
No, he's not. It's a bona fide deal. I happen to know about it.
Mr. Gatsby, I'm glad to see you. Nick,
Make us a cold drink, Tom.
coming up.
As he left the room again, Daisy went over to Gatsby and pulled his face down, kissing him on the mouth.
You know I love you.
Oh, you forget there's a lady present.
You kiss Nick too.
Oh, what a low, vulgar girl.
I don't care.
Tom came back with 4 gin rickeys that clicked full of ice.
What'll we do with ourselves this afternoon? And the day after that? And the next 30 years?
Oh, don't be morbid. Life starts all over again when it gets crisp in the fall.
But it's so hot. Let's all go to town. Who wants to go? Jay?
All right, I'm perfectly willing to go to town. Come on, let's start.
Daisy and Jordan went upstairs to get ready while we 3 men stood outside, shuffling hot pebbles with our feet.
I don't see the idea of going to town. Women get these notions in their heads.
Shall we take anything to drink?
I'll get some whiskey. Excuse me, gents.
I can't say anything in his house, old sport.
She's got an indiscreet voice. It's full of...
Her voice is full of money.
It was full of money. The simple song of it. Tom came out of the house wrapping a bottle in a towel, followed by Daisy and Jordan.
Shall we all go in my car?
Well, you take my coupe and let me drive your car to town.
I don't think there's much gas.
Plenty of gas. Come on, Daisy. I'll take you in this circus wagon.
No, you take Nick and Jordan. We'll follow you in the coupe.
Jordan and Tom and I got into the front seat of Gatsby's car.
Did you see that? You think I'm pretty dumb, don't you? Perhaps I am, but I've made a small investigation of his past.
And you found out he was an Oxford man.
An Oxford man? Like hell he is. Oxford, New Mexico, or something like that.
Listen, Tom, if you're such a snob, why did you invite him to lunch?
Daisy invited him. She knew him before we were married, God knows where.
And then we drove for a while in silence. Then, as Dr. T.J. Eckelberg's eyes came into sight, I remembered Gatsby's caution about gasoline.
We've got enough gas to get us to town.
Oh, but there's a garage right there. I don't want to get stalled in this baking heat.
Let's have some gas, Wilson. What do you think we stopped for? To admire the view?
I'm sick. I've been sick all day.
You sounded well enough on the phone.
I need money pretty bad, and I was wondering what you were going to do with your old car.
How do you like this one? I just bought it last week.
It's a nice yellow one.
Like to buy it?
Big chance. No. But I could make some money with the other one.
What do you want money for all of a sudden?
My wife and I want to go west.
Your wife does?
She's been talking about it for years, and now she's going, whether she wants to or not. I just got wised up to something funny the last two days, and that's why I want to get away.
I realized Wilson had discovered that Myrtle had some sort of life apart from him, but his suspicions hadn't yet alighted on Tom.
I'll let you have that car. I'll send it over tomorrow afternoon.
As we drove away, Tom was feeling the hot whips of panic. His wife and his mistress, until an hour ago secure, were slipping from his control. Instinct made him step on the accelerator, and we sped along until we came in sight of the blue coupe. Daisy signaled us to drop alongside.
Where are we going?
Well, how about the movies?
It's so hot. You go. We'll ride around and meet you.
We can't argue about it here. Follow me to the plaza.
We engaged a suite at the Plaza Hotel. It was large and stifling.
Open another window.
Oh, there aren't anymore.
The thing to do is to forget about the heat. You make it 10 times worse by crabbing about it.
Why not let her alone, old sport? You're the one that wanted to come to town.
That's a great expression of yours, isn't it? All this old sport business. Where'd you pick that up? I understand you're an Oxford man.
Yes, I went there.
I'd like to know when.
I only stayed for 5 months. That's why I can't really call myself an Oxford man. It was an opportunity they gave to some of the officers after the armistice.
Open the whiskey, Tom, and I'll make you a mint julep. Then you won't seem so stupid to yourself.
Wait a minute, I want to ask Mr. Gatsby one more question.
Go on.
What kind of a row are you trying to cause at my house anyhow?
Jay isn't causing a row, Tom. You're causing a row. Please have a little self-control.
Self-control! I suppose the latest thing is to sit back and let Mr. Nobody from Nowhere make love to your wife.
I've got something to tell you, old sport.
Please don't, Jay. Let's all go home.
That's a good idea. Come on, Tom.
I want to know what Mr. Gatsby has to tell me.
Your wife doesn't love you. She's never loved you. She loves me.
You must be crazy.
She never loved you, do you hear? She only married you because I was poor and she was tired of waiting for me. It was a terrible mistake, but in her heart, she never loved anyone except me.
What's been going on? I want to hear all about it.
It's been going on for 5 years.
You've been seeing this fellow for 5 years, Daisy?
Oh, no, not seeing, no. We couldn't meet. But both of us loved each other all that time. I used to laugh sometimes to think you didn't know.
You're crazy! I can't speak about what happened 5 years ago because I didn't know Daisy then. But all the rest of that's a goddamn lie. Daisy loved me when she married me and she loves me now.
No.
She does though. The trouble is sometimes she gets foolish ideas in her head. And once in a while I go off on a spree and make a fool of myself. But I always come back. And in my heart I love her all the time.
You're revolting.
Well, just tell him the truth, Daisy. That you never loved him and it's all wiped out forever.
Why? How could I love him? Possibly.
You never loved him.
I never loved him.
Not when we were in Hawaii?
No.
Not that day I carried you down from the punch bowl to keep your shoes dry?
Please don't. There, Jay. Oh, you want too much. I love you now. Isn't that enough? I can't help what's past. I did love him once. But I loved you too.
You loved me too?
Even that's a lie. She didn't know you were alive. Why, there's things between Daisy and me that she'll never know. Things that neither of us can ever forget. I want to speak to Daisy alone.
Even alone, I can't say I never loved Tom. It wouldn't be true.
Of course it wouldn't.
As if it mattered to you.
Of course it matters. I'm going to take better care of you from now on.
You don't understand. You're not going to take care of her anymore.
I'm not? Why is that?
Daisy's leaving you.
Nonsense.
I am, though.
She's not leaving me. Certainly not for a common swindler who'd have to steal the ring he put on his finger.
Oh, I won't stand this. Please, let's get out.
Who are you, anyhow? You're one of that bunch that hangs around with Maya Wolfsheim. That much I happen to know. I've made a little investigation into your affairs. I found out that your drugstores were. He and this Wolfsheim bought up a lot of side street drugstores here and in Chicago and sold grain alcohol over the counter. I picked him for a bootlegger the first time I saw him, and I wasn't far wrong.
What about it, old sport?
Don't you call me old sport. That drugstore business was just small change, but you've got something bigger on now that people are afraid to talk about.
Please, Tom. I can't stand this anymore.
You two start on home, Daisy. In Mr. Gatsby's car, he won't annoy you. I think he realizes that this presumptuous little flirtation is over.
And they were gone, without a word. After a moment, Tom got up and began wrapping the unopened bottle of whiskey in a towel.
Want any of this stuff, Jordan, Nick?
No, I just remembered today's my birthday. I was 30, and before me stretched the menacing road of a new decade.
We will return you to the WBFR Playhouse of the Air presentation of The Great Gatsby after a word from our sponsor.
Having car trouble, Lana?
I'll say I am, and of all times. I'm late for a hot date, and don't know an undercarriage from a tailpipe.
Well, this is a pickle. Can you keep a secret?
No.
I don't know the undercarriage from a tailpipe either.
But your car is always in tip-top shape and never lets you down.
Well, that's my little secret. You see, I have a friend.
Oh, do tell. What's his name?
Why, it's my handy-dandy green light automobile service repairman. That's who.
Swell. Say, you've got all the brakes.
My handy-dandy green light automobile service repairman has all the brakes and spark plugs and hubcaps too. Anytime I'm having car trouble, I simply call him and my troubles vanish into ether.
Do you suppose your handy-dandy green light automobile service repairman could give me a hand?
He'd be happy to. And with over 100 locations across the continental United States, there's never a green light automobile service company far from home. On the road of life, few things are sure. It's quite the uphill ride. When you hit a bump and can't endure, green light is on your side. Red
You're Richard
light,
Crux.
red
You're
light,
stuck in snow.
red
Wildlife
light,
attacks.
green light,
You're good to go.
red light,
Things rattles and shakes.
red light,
Your tires blow.
red
Someone cut your brakes.
green light, green light, green light.
You're good to go.
Look for the Green Light Automobile Service Company in your classified phone book today. Your car will thank you.
We return you now to the conclusion of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby.
It was 7 o'clock when Jordan and I got into the coupe with Tom and started for Long Island. We drove on toward death through the cooling twilight. Michaelis, the young Greek who ran a coffee shop just beside the ash heaps, was the principal witness at the inquest. He strolled over to the garage and found George Wilson sick in his office, pale and shaking all over. Michaelis advised him to go to bed, but a violent racket broke out overhead.
I've got my wife locked in up there. She's going to stay there till the day after tomorrow, and then we're going to move away.
Michaelis tried to find out what had happened, but Wilson wouldn't say a word. Instead, he began to ask him what he'd been doing at certain times on certain days. Just as Michaelis was getting uneasy, some workmen came past the door bound for his restaurant, and he took the opportunity to get away. When he went outside again, later he heard Mrs. Wilson's voice in the garage.
Beat me! Throw me down and beat me, you dirty little coward!
A moment later, she rushed out into the dusk, waving her hands and shouting. Before Michaelis could move, it was over. The death car, as the newspapers called it, didn't stop. It came out of nowhere, wavered for a moment, and then disappeared around the bend. A car going toward New York stopped 100 yards beyond. Michaelis and the driver reached Myrtle first, but it was too late. We saw 3 or 4 automobiles and a crowd when we were still some distance away.
A wreck. That's good. Wilson have a little business at last. Well, just take a look. There's some bad trouble here.
Tom pushed his way through the crowd and into the garage. Myrtle Wilson's body was wrapped in a blanket on a work table. A motorcycle policeman was taking down names in a little book. Wilson was swaying back and forth.
Oh, my God! Oh, my God! Oh, my God!
Listen to me!
What you want, fella?
What happened? That's what I want to know.
Auto hit her, instantly killed.
She ran out on the road. Son of a bitch didn't even stop his car.
Oh, I saw the car. It was big, new yellow car. It passed down the road going 50, 60, oh, no, 70 miles an hour.
Well, let's have your name, lass.
Listen, Wilson, you've got to pull yourself together. That yellow car I was driving this afternoon wasn't mine, do you hear?
What's all that?
I'm a friend of his. He says he knows the car that did it. It was a yellow car.
Ah, and what color might be your car?
It's a blue coupe. Let's get out of here, Nick.
Tom drove slowly until we were beyond the bend, and then we raced along through the night.
The goddamn coward. He didn't even stop his car.
The Buchanan's house appeared suddenly through the trees.
Daisy's home. I ought to drop you in West Egg, Nick. I'll telephone for a taxi to take you home.
Won't you come in, Nick?
No thanks, Jordan. I'll wait outside for my taxi. I'd be damned if I'd go in. I'd had enough of all of them. I walked down the drive and I saw Gatsby.
Nick,
What are you doing here?
just standing here, old sport. You see any trouble on the road?
Yes,
Was she killed?
yes.
I told Daisy I thought so. She stood it pretty well. I got to West Egg by a side road and left the car in my garage. I didn't think anybody saw us.
I didn't bother to tell him he was wrong.
Well, who's the woman?
Her name was Myrtle Wilson. Her husband owns the garage. How the devil did it happen?
Well, I tried to swing the wheel.
Was Daisy driving?
Yes, but of course I'll say I was. You see, when we left New York, she was very nervous and she thought it would steady her to drive. And this woman rushed out at us. It all happened in a minute, but it seemed to me that she wanted to speak to us. Thought we were somebody she knew. The second my hand reached the wheel, I felt the shock. Must have killed her instantly.
Jay, it ripped her open.
Don't tell me, old sport. Anyhow, I tried to make Daisy stop, but she couldn't, so I pulled on the emergency brake. Then she fell over into my lap, and I drove on. She'll be all right tomorrow. She's locked herself into her room, and if he tries any brutality, she's gonna turn the light on and out again.
He won't touch her. He's not thinking about her.
I don't trust him.
How long are you going to wait?
All night, if necessary.
I walked to the window. Daisy and Tom were sitting at the kitchen table. He was talking intently, and once in a while she looked up at him and nodded. They weren't happy, and yet they weren't unhappy either.
Is it all quiet up there?
Yes, you'd better come home and get some sleep.
I want to wait here till Daisy goes to bed. Good night, old sport.
I left him standing there in the moonlight, watching over nothing. I couldn't sleep, half sick between grotesque reality and savage dreams. Toward dawn, I heard a taxi go up Gatsby's drive, and I jumped out of bed. I had to warn him.
Nothing happened. About 4 o'clock, she came to the window and stood there for a minute, then turned out the light.
It's pretty certain they'll trace your car. You want to go up to Atlantic City for a week, or up to Montreal?
No, I couldn't consider it. How could I possibly leave Daisy until I know what she's gonna do?
He was clutching at some last hope, and I couldn't bear to shake him free. He wanted to talk about Daisy. She was the first nice girl he'd ever known. It excited him, too, that many men had already loved Daisy. It increased her value. But he knew that however glorious might be his future as J. Gatsby, he was at present a penniless young man without a past. And at any moment, the invisible cloak of his uniform might slip from his shoulders.
I can't describe how surprised I was to find out I loved her, old sport. I even hoped that she'd throw me over, but she didn't, because she was in love with me, too. The last afternoon, before I went abroad, I sat with Daisy in my arms for a long time. We had never been closer. I did well in the war. Well, after the armistice, I tried to get home, but ended up at Oxford instead. I was worried. There was despair in Daisy's letters. She wanted to see me and be reassured that she was doing the right thing by waiting for me. She wanted her life shaped immediately, and a decision made by some force of love, of money, that was close at hand. That force took shape with the arrival of Tom Buchanan. There was something about his person and position, and Daisy was flattered. The letter reached me while I was still at Oxford. I don't think she ever loved him. Of course, she might have when they were first married, and loved me more even then, do you see?
It was 9 o'clock when we finished breakfast and went out on the porch. The gardener came up to the foot of the steps.
I'm going to drain the pool today, Mr. Gatsby. Leaves will start falling pretty soon, and there's always trouble with the pipes.
No, don't do it today. You know, sport, I've never used that pool all summer.
12 minutes to my train. I didn't want to go to the city. I wasn't worth a decent stroke of work, but more than that, I didn't want to leave Gatsby. I'll call you about noon.
Do, old sport. I suppose Daisy will call too.
I suppose so.
Well, goodbye.
They're a rotten crowd. You're worth the whole damn bunch of them put together. He nodded politely, then his face broke into that radiant smile. Now I want to go back a little and tell what happened at the garage after we left there the night before. Until long after midnight, a changing crowd hung around the garage, while George Wilson rocked himself back and forth on the couch inside. Michaela sat with him. About 3 o'clock, the quality of Wilson's incoherent muttering changed. He grew quieter and began to talk about the yellow car. He announced that he had a way of finding out whom it belonged to, and then blurted out that a couple of months ago his wife had come from the city with her face bruised and her nose swollen.
He murdered her.
It was an accident, George.
It was the man in that car. She ran out to speak to him, and he would stop.
Maybe you got some friend that I could telephone for, George?
I took her to the window, and I said, God knows everything you've been doing. You may fool me, but you can't fool God. God sees everything.
Those eyes are on an advertisement, George.
Michaelis was worn out and went home to sleep. When he woke and hurried back to the garage, Wilson was gone. There were boys who had seen a man acting sort of crazy. He went from garage to garage inquiring about a yellow car and finally learned Gatsby's name and where he lived. At 2 o'clock, Gatsby put on his bathing suit and told the butler that if anyone phoned, word was to be brought to him at the pool. No telephone message arrived. I have an idea that Gatsby himself didn't believe it would come, and perhaps he no longer cared. If that was true, he must have felt that he paid a high price for living too long with a single dream. I drove from the station directly to Gatsby's house, and my rushing anxiously up the front steps was the first thing that alarmed anyone. Then the chauffeur said he had heard some shots, but didn't think much about them. With scarcely a word, the chauffeur, butler, gardener, and I hurried down to the pool. The cluster of leaves revolved slowly, tracing a thin red circle in the water. It was after we started with Gatsby's body toward the house that the gardener saw Wilson's body a little way off in the grass. And the Holocaust was complete. The rest of that day and the next were an endless parade of police and photographers and newspapermen. Most of the newspaper reports were grotesque, circumstantial, and untrue. I called Daisy.
Buchanan residence.
May I speak to Daisy, please? This is Nick Carraway.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Garraway, but Mr. and Mrs. Buchanan are not at home at present.
When will they return?
They left early this afternoon and took baggage with them.
Did they say when they'd be back? How can I get a hold of them?
No, I don't know.
I wanted to get somebody for Gatsby. I sent the butler to New York with a letter to Meyer Wolfsheim, which urged him to come out on the next train. The butler brought back Wolfsheim's answer.
Dear Mr. Carraway, this has been one of the most terrible shocks of my life. I can hardly believe that it is true at all. Such a mad act as that man did should make us all think. I cannot come down now as I am tied up in some very important business and cannot get mixed up in this thing right now. If there's anything I can do a little later, let me know in a letter. I hardly know where I am when I hear about a thing like this, and I'm completely knocked down and out. Yours truly, Maya Wolfsheim. Addenda. Let me know about the funeral, etc. I do not know his family at all.
On the third day, a telegram signed Henry C. Gatz arrived from a town in Minnesota. It said only that the sender was leaving immediately and to postpone the funeral until he came. It was Gatsby's father. When he arrived, he was on the point of collapse.
I saw it in the Chicago newspaper and started for here right away.
I didn't know how to reach you.
It was a madman. He must have been a madman.
Wouldn't you like some coffee?
I don't want anything. Where have they got Jimmy?
I took him to the drawing room where his son lay. After a little while, Mr. Gatz came out. He saw the splendor of the great rooms, and his grief began to be mixed with an odd pride. I told him all arrangements had been deferred until he came. I didn't know what you want, Mr. Gatsby.
Gatz is my name.
Mr. Gatz, I'm sorry. I thought you might want to take the body west.
Jimmy always liked it better down east. Were you a friend of my boys?
We were close friends.
He had a big future before him, you know. If he'd lived, he'd have been a great man.
Your son was a great man, Mr. Gatz. Hello, this is Mr. Carraway.
Hey, this is Springer.
The funeral's tomorrow, 3 o'clock, here at the house. I wish you'd tell anybody who'd be interested.
Oh, well, of course. I'm not likely to see anybody. What if I do?
Of course, you'll be there yourself?
Well, I'll certainly try. What I call up about is...
Wait a minute, wait.
Why,
How about saying that you'll come?
Well, you see, the fact is, what I called up about was a pair of shoes right up there. I wonder if it'd be too much trouble, you see, to have the butler send them on. You see, they're tennis shoes, and I'm sort of helpless without them.
I hung up the telephone. I felt a certain shame for Gatsby. One gentleman I telephoned implied that he'd got what he deserved. The morning of the funeral, I went up to New York to see Meyer Wolfsheim. Couldn't seem to reach him any other way. He drew me into his office and offered me a cigar.
When I first met Gatsby, he was a young major just out of the army, covered in medals. He was so hard up he had to keep wearing his uniform because he couldn't buy regular clothes. First time I saw him was when he come into Weinbrenner's pool room and asked for a job. He hadn't eaten anything for a couple of days, so I said, come have some lunch with me.
Did you start him in business?
Start him? I made him. Raised him up out of nothing, right out of the gutter. I saw right away he was a gentlemanly young man, and I knew I could use him good.
You were his closest friend, so I know you'll want to come to his funeral this afternoon.
I can't do it. I can't get mixed up in it.
There's nothing to get mixed up in.
When a
It's
man
all over
gets...
now.
Oh, when a man gets killed, I never like to get mixed up in it in any way. Let us learn how to show our friendship for a man when he's alive, and not after he's dead.
I left his office, and when I got back to West Egg, Mr. Gatz had something to show me.
Look here. This is a book he had when he was a boy.
He pulled from his pocket a ragged old copy of a book called Hopalong Cassidy. On the last flyleaf was printed the word schedule and the date September 12th, 1906. And underneath that,
6 a.m., rise from bed. 6:15 to 6:30, exercise. 7:15 to 8:15, study electricity, etc. 8:30 to 4:30 p.m., work. 4:30 to 5, baseball and sports. 5 to 6, practice elocution, poise, and how to attain it. 7 to 9, study needed inventions, general resolves. No wasting time as shafters. No more smoking or chewing. Bath every other day. Read one improving book or magazine per week. Save $5, $3 per week. Be better to parents.
I just came across this book by accident. It just shows you, don't it?
it just shows you. A little before 3, the minister arrived as I began to look out the windows for other cars. But nobody came. About 5 o'clock, we reached the cemetery, and as we started through the gate, I heard someone splashing after us over the soggy ground. It was the man with the owl-eyed glasses whom I had found marveling over Gatsby's books in the library 3 months before.
I couldn't get to the house.
Neither could anyone else.
Go on. Oh my God. They used to go there by the hundreds. Poor son of a bitch.
After Gatsby's death, the East was haunted for me, and I decided to head back home to the Midwest. There was one thing to be done before I left. I saw Jordan Baker and talked over and around what had happened to us. When I finished, she told me she was engaged to another man. I doubted that, but I pretended to be surprised and said goodbye. One afternoon, late in October, I saw Tom Buchanan along Fifth Avenue, frowning into the windows of a jewelry store. Suddenly, he saw me and reached out his hand.
What's the matter, Nick? Do you object to shaking hands with me?
Yes, you know what I think about you. Tom, what did you say to Wilson that afternoon?
The truth. I told him the truth. He came to the door while we were getting ready to leave, and when I sent down word that we weren't in, he tried to force his way upstairs. He was crazy enough to kill me if I hadn't told him who owned the car. His hand was on a revolver in his pocket every minute. What if I did tell him? That fellow had it coming to him. He threw dust into your eyes just like he did Daisy's. He ran over Myrtle like you'd run over a dog and never even stopped his car.
There was nothing I could say except that it wasn't true. I couldn't forgive him. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they'd made. On the last night, I went over and looked at Gatsby's huge, incoherent failure of a house once more. Then I wandered down to the beach. As the moon rose, I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes. A fresh new world. Its vanished trees that had made way for Gatsby's house had once pandered to the last and greatest of all human dreams. For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, face to face with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder. I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. We did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in that vast obscurity beyond the city where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on into the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on. Boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past.
WBFR Playoffs Premiere presentation of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, featuring Jake Loretz, Sally Applewhite, Lana Sherwood, Tony Hunter, Nelson North, and yours truly, Freddie Fillmore. The WBFR Playoffs of the Air is sponsored by TJ Eckelberg's Fashion Design Spectacle Frames and the Green Light Automobile Service Repair Company. Please stay tuned for a program of popular hits from the Roaring Twenties. Good night.
That's the end of the show.